Alright guys, welcome back to F1 News. Formula 1 have revealed the calendar for the 2024 season with another attempt at 24 races next year. They say they're improving regionalisation significantly. Is that really the case though? It's probably better than last year. You guys can be the judges in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. Here we go then. The 2024 calendar dropped with some surprise today. I think we'd heard about what the first 6 races were going to be, but after that we didn't really know. This is how it's going to be. Bahrain is the opener. 2 key things to note here with the double header Bahrain Saudi Arabia, Sakhir and Jeddah respectively. That's going to be Saturday races this time. I believe due to Ramadan they've been wanting to push those races back to the Saturday or pull them back I guess to the Saturday. So that's what they're going to do. So the 2nd of March, the 9th of March are Saturdays in addition to Las Vegas, which is also probably going to be a Saturday night race. That's the case this year in 2023. The Las Vegas Grand Prix will be on Saturday night because I guess that makes more sense in Vegas, and they're going to do the same thing next season at the start for Bahrain Saudi Arabia. Then we go to Australia as expected, but then it is Suzuka, and this is like really weird to be honest to see the Japanese Grand Prix this early. I don't mind it, and maybe this can help avoid some of the weather that we typically get in Japan around the time that it usually is, which can cause some issues with the races in the past. Maybe I'm not so sure about the climate in Japan and different times of the year, what seasons are wet and dry per se, but I think that might help us have some races that don't just get rained off every single time. And it's not like it's always been the case, but there's usually rain concerns around Japan for good or for ill. So maybe that'll change things around there a bit. Then we go back to Shanghai, apparently. I mean, look, they said we were going to go to Shanghai again this year. Didn't happen. They had to cancel it. So it may happen again. It may not. We'll see. But they're meant to go to China. And then we've got Miami in the middle of nowhere. So there's definitely been an attempt here to regionalize the calendar better than previously, which is commendable in some respects. As we talked about yesterday, the engine kind of emissions from the cars pale in comparison to the amount of emissions that happen with all the teams flying across the world, especially with many long-haul flights. So they're trying to regionalize. Australia, Japan, China, that's fine. But then we go to Miami, and then we go back to Europe again. So this is one of the exceptions where they haven't found another way around this. Miami, I expect that to be the final year of Miami on the calendar. I'm pretty sure its contract ends after 2024. Then we do the European leg with Imola, Monaco, but then we get to Montreal again. So this is the thing with the Canadian Grand Prix. Due to various holidays, I think in Canada, it turns out this is the best time to run it. And we'll come to Azerbaijan in a second because usually that's much earlier in the season and that's now much later. Also to note, there's no new tracks here. There's nothing new coming in, which is a bit of a shame. You know, people wanted South Africa, for example. That's not going to happen. But again, Canada is kind of in no man's land a little bit between Monaco and Spain. But, you know, we're kind of used to it at this point. After that, though, the Canada is pretty good. So the first rounds are a bit questionable. I quite like bringing Japan earlier. But once we get to Spain, we get the triple header of Spain, Austria, Silverstone, pretty similar to what we've just had actually. Then a couple of weeks after Hungary, then at Spa, which stays on the calendar for now at least, which is good. Another double header there. So 5 races in 6 weeks there between round 10 and round 14. Then the summer break, then we go to Zandvoort, round 15, then straight away to Monza, and then the European leg finishes by going over to Azerbaijan. And I actually don't mind this at all, the way that this is scheduled, because typically it's been like Azerbaijan, then to Miami, then back over here, and I quite like the way this is set up. So I think they've done a better job than this year. Not saying it's perfect, it's obviously not. There's things they could do better, but it's still, I think, a step in the right direction. So Azerbaijan round 17, then we go to Singapore, and that pretty much finishes off all of the Asian leg. So it's interesting that Singapore is here in the season, but it's not too bad actually. And then we start the other leg in the US. So we go US in Austin, right, the Texas Grand Prix, then Mexico, then Brazil. So it feels like Brazil should, in my opinion, be like ideally the last race. I know many people wish that Australia was the first race again, and I get that. It would be nice if we started at Melbourne and finished out in Interlagos, but it's not going to happen. But still, even like 4 races from the end of the season, Brazil feels a bit strange, but whatever. They are regionalizing it because we go Texas, Mexico, Brazil, all after another, and then we go back to Las Vegas for round 22, and then closing out the season with a double header. And actually, there's a triple header here. There's back-to-back triple headers. And also to note that after Singapore, there's a big big break. So after Singapore, there's like 3 weeks off, almost like another big break. I'm not really sure why between then, especially a month between Singapore and Austin, which I'm not exactly sure why that's the case, because even the summer break isn't even that long between July and August. So not sure why the massive break here between Singapore and Austin, but there's a triple header, USA, Mexico, Brazil. That's the second triple header of the season after this one, Spain, Austria, UK, and then the third triple header, Las Vegas, Qatar, Abu Dhabi. So it's a hectic end to the season for sure. But yeah, Vegas and then Qatar, great circuit to race there in 2021. We'll race there again this year with a sprint weekend, I believe. And then Abu Dhabi. This will be the longest season ever if this goes ahead as planned, starting at the end of February and ending in the second week of December. That's, I mean, back in, like, it wasn't that long ago where the season started in April and finished in October. And we're now talking about a season significantly longer than that. So these are the key facts that Formula 1 want to promote. 24 races. It was meant to be 24 this year. Imola got cancelled. China never happened, etc. But there's meant to be 24 next year. It's tough for the teams. It's tough for the personnel. And we might get more in the future. It's more regionalised, for sure, fair play. Saturday races to respect Ramadan in Bahrain and Saudi Arabia, and the Chinese Grand Prix is apparently back. So those are the key dates if you guys are looking to attend any of these Grand Prix, and all the key storylines associated with it. So hopefully that makes sense for you guys. Gave the best rundown that I think that I could on this one. And let's dive on to some other key topics of the day regarding the Silverstone Grand Prix, which is coming up this weekend. This is a tweaked livery because of Valvoline or something, a new partner of Aston Martin. They've got, obviously, I kind of like this, to be honest. It's kind of the livery that it was, but they've got the tweak to the shark pin, the red and blue. Could look kind of nice. That's what they're up to this weekend. Also, you guys might remember the big story around this Apex movie. Brad Pitt, Hamilton's getting involved in this one. They're doing some filming at the Grand Prix in Silverstone this weekend. Now, they're not going to be on track at the same time as the Formula 1 cars, but I think that there's a team that's, I think, worked with the Mercedes guys who's made Formula 2 cars into very much lookalike Formula 1 cars. It's like modified F2 cars that Brad Pitt's character Sonny Hayes can drive around in, around Silverstone to, you know, they're going to do some filming for the film effectively this weekend. So going to be pretty interesting. And according to Ted Kravitz, I think he said this in one of his notebooks, that the team that's like the film crew team is going to be stationed in a garage right next door to the actual Formula 1 teams. So it's going to be interesting. I'm sure for those attending it'll be quite exciting to see how that's developing. Joseph Kosinski director of Top Gun Maverick, so, you know, lots of optimism. This film's actually going to be pretty good, unlike most of the stuff that is released, unfortunately, in cinemas nowadays. Quickly on upgrades as well, because Helmut Marko's confirmed Red Bull are bringing nothing here to Silverstone, and it's not surprising because they don't need to, but, you know, usually Silverstone you bring upgrades, right? So this probably implies that Red Bull are giving up on this year's car to some extent, and they're really focusing on next year's now. I think they will have a couple of more things Red Bull to bring it before the end of the season, but they're pretty much set in stone. Most other teams are bringing things though. Red Bull did also hire a Ferrari engineer though, working on the engine combustion chamber side, because we understand that is a bit of a concern for Red Bull right now in terms of how good they're going to be come 2026 with the new engine regulations. We talked about that one yesterday. Toto Wolff though and Mercedes, they've got a brand new front wing, I believe, this weekend. Mercedes have for the W14. This track should suit them much better theoretically than Austria, just based on the characteristics of the circuit. It should be better for them. I mean, it was even a couple of weeks ago now that Toto Wolff was asked the question, if you guys can win one race this season, where will it be? And Toto Wolff said Silverstone. Probably he's not as optimistic now after the event in Austria, but even then I think that Hamilton said that they were struggling with setup a bit, and they made a tweak to the front wing in Austria to try and compensate for the oversteer they were getting on the rear ends and the rear instability, but they took it way too far the other direction, and the car just straight up wouldn't turn into corners because it didn't have the front wing. Then they made some adjustments in the pit stops. It made it better, but it still wasn't ideal. So Mercedes basically messed up their setup last weekend, and that hurt them bad, in addition to just a car that didn't really suit that track particularly well. Toto Wolff says, though, Red Bull are beatable this year. That's why they're not fully focused on next year just yet, because they're still confident they can at least get a couple of race victories this season. And there's been some articles discussing how the strong front end of the Mercedes should be very much better suited to a circuit like Silverstone, Silverstone than, well, let's say Austria, where traction out of, especially, corners like turn 3 is a real challenge if you don't have a particularly stable rear end of the car. Just one final thing to mention for you guys before we close out the video. So Daniel Ricciardo, lots of talk about him lately and Alpha Tauri. There was even a quote I saw today from Helmut Marko who said, is your opinion going to change on Nick de Vries? And he says, no, I'm not going to talk to Nick de Vries. My opinion is what it is. And he's got probably 3 more races, de Vries, to prove that he deserves a spot, and he hasn't really been, let's be honest. Even Kevin Magnussen said after they had some, funny really, because they had that crash in Canada, right, when de Vries just locked up and sent them both straight off into the runoff area out of, turn 3, turn 4, and then again it was de Vries and Magnussen coming together in Austria when de Vries was forcing him onto the grass, and Magnussen said that basically shows de Vries is desperate to maintain his seat, and maybe there's some truth in that. So he's got until the summer break. And after the summer break, I think it's actually more likely than not right now they'll try and put Liam Lawson in that car. But Daniel Ricciardo could be an option, especially next season. Christian Horner said he's obviously a talented driver. There will be some questions about this Pirelli tyre test. This is going on shortly after the Silverstone Grand Prix, and Daniel Ricciardo will be getting into the RB19 and doing some laps just to show, has he got it, has he not got it? But Christian Horner did say that in the simulator, he's now extremely competitive in what he's doing in the virtual world. So if that can translate, and Ricciardo is looking very competitive on their simulator, then there are some questions to be answered there in terms of where Ricciardo might go next year, or even what the future of Perez is if he continues to have consistently underperforming weekends. Very much enjoyed to hear your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.